Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to a much delayed, it's been a while, edition of Brit's Cabinet. So long that I read the books that we talked about reading for it a long time ago and didn't get an opportunity to reread them to be ready to talk about them now. So I called tonight a reset. We're just gonna talk comics, talk the world, talk autism, talk whatever. I want to hear more details about your San Diego Comic-Con experience because Britt actually got written up in the beat for his San Diego Comic-Con autism panel, which is a cool thing to see. Um, Always fun now when I see the pictures of friends of mine pop up in my news articles.
Yeah, that was really fun.
So
It's a panel I've done a bunch before, as you know, which you
yeah,
saw
I saw a version of it. Yeah,
at C2E2 a
my
couple years
version
ago.
didn't have Dennis Camp though.
It did not. This was an exciting one. So the panel is autism and comic books, and in it, the premise of the original premise, at least, was that I would just talk about the history of literally every explicitly autistic character who ever appeared in the history of comic books. And when I started, it was about 22, and I've since uncovered more and sort of expanded my parameters a little bit to include some web comics. Um, and I found, I think I'm up at about, I don't know, 35-ish at this point, which is still not a colossal number. And then
Right.
there are some characters and comics that don't exactly fit my parameters, but still sort of count. So I throw those in at the end just to let people know if they're looking for that kind of a thing, they can certainly find it. But this one was particularly special. There were a couple of comic books that came out recently that have explicitly autistic characters that were very big, very popular comics, or by popular writers, or even just by big publishers, that I got to include when I did it at WonderCon in March. And then when that got accepted to do it again at San Diego Comic-Con, I reached out to a couple of these writers, and in particular, I tried to find out how to get a hold of Dennis Camp, and I don't think I ever heard back from him, just because I don't know that I had a good contact for him. And
No,
I went to a panel where he was getting interviewed by Scott Snyder, and he was super cool, and it was a really interesting panel. And my goodness, that guy's got an interesting life. And then afterwards, I just stuck my flyer in his hand. That was a Friday, I guess. And when I saw his panel, and I stuck a flyer in his hand that said, "Hey, I'm doing a panel on Sunday. Will you?" And it's called Autism and Comic Books. Will you be on my panel? And he says, "Yeah." Can my wife come? And I'm thinking, like, yeah, it's not going to be a sold out. My personal panel on
right.
Sunday at lunchtime isn't going to be a sold out panel. But I was like, yeah, sure. And I didn't realize. Oh, and then that night he won. He and his book,
Everything.
Absolute
They
Martian
won everything.
Manhunter. Absolute Martian
Absolute Martian
Manhunter
Matter, Assorted Crisis
won
Events.
won 4 Eisners specifically.
Right.
This one book, that I wanted him to talk about, because as Tad, you and I have talked about a bunch, there's a, and don't spoil the ending of this story. Let me sort of get
Right.
through this part. But there's a character in there, the son Tyler, and he, especially in issue 12, which was the final issue of the series, he is really coded as autistic, and the language that the parents use in talking about him and his therapies and the expression of his challenges all line up with my experience with an autistic son. And so I wanted him to be on the panel in part to just confirm that he intended this kid to be autistic. And so when he said yes, I sort of took that as at least a tacit acknowledgement that, yeah, he did intend the kid to be autistic, but he didn't say that when I spoke with him. What he told me was
Right.
that his wife is autistic. And so when he won those Eisners Friday night or Saturday or whatever it was, I was like, all right, he's going to be too busy to come to my little panel on Sunday. And so I thought I had a coin flip chance of him being there, but he showed up. He was there with his wife. And then what I didn't realize is he intended his wife to be on the panel. And like, she turned out to be wonderful and lovely. But he could have asked if a cactus could be on the panel, and I would have said yes. I mean, that's perfectly great. And then she turned out to be terrific and like a really, really good panelist. But he gets up there, and through the course of our conversation, I say what I said to you, which is that, hey, this kid Tyler, a lot of people are speculating that he's autistic. And he says, yeah, Tyler's autistic, and so is the father. And I think, Tad, you might have also flagged
I
him as,
I was the one that said, John, I
yeah,
mean,
as being
that was
coded as
that was
autistic
part
as
of my
well. Yeah.
strong assertion in our book club of Assorted
Yeah. Well, you were
Crisis
spot on.
Events.
And
Yeah.
I think even a long time ago you had said something like,
Yeah.
you were like, I really think something very
I mean, the
specific is
first
going to
time we
happen.
talked about it back, I mean, because we talked about it on Brit's Cabinet, we put it with
Hmm.
Alienated,
Yeah.
the Takisoma book, because you had a lot of use of color for emotion and
Hmm.
secondary sight in both of them. Um, so yeah, 6 issues in, I was already starting to feel that way, but the back six
The back six made it more clear, but even more so than
made it
I
really
quite
feel
had
that way
locked
to me.
into. Yeah, but
Yeah.
you had been pretty strong on that. So
Well,
he
it
gets on
just
the
it paralleled my own experience so much.
That's really interesting for you to hear because that's what Dennis had said about his work, and then something else, which I'll also get to. Another, he sort of broke news on the panel, which was super exciting to me. I was surprised that no one else seems to have asked him about this, as I've heard, a whole bunch of interviews about him, about the book, and with him. But whatever. I guess maybe other people were looking for other things also because it's a really rich work, and
Oh
you
yeah.
you can talk about lots of different things in it. He puts a lot of thought into it, and it's a very rich topic. But whatever. So it just happened to be on my panel that, as far as I can tell, he broke the news. So he said that both the son and the father were autistic, and of course, their autism expressed itself in different ways. And then on the panel, he explained that the one of the emotional cores of the book, especially once you've read issue 12, is it's an exciting adventure book that has all kinds of cool things going on in it. But he made it clear also that the emotional core of the book was the relationship between the father, the son, and the father, the wife, and the son. The wife is neurotypical. The father is one flavor of autistic. The son is another flavor of autistic, and that John and that John specifically was modeled on Dennis's wife Katie's dad, who she says is autistic, and that he was never diagnosed and never acknowledged it, and sort of felt the stigma of it, so didn't want to be diagnosed and didn't want to address that, and that
Right.
Katie herself was diagnosed as autistic, but only later in life. And then I think she said maybe one or two of her other siblings were neurodivergent, and so the complications that his failure is not exactly the right word. The fact that he did not address his autism in his life meant that there were complications that led to his family relationships, including with his kids, which were Katie and Katie's siblings, and that formed the emotional core of Dennis's work. Dennis's work on Absolute Martian Manhunter. So the book itself, for anybody in the audience who hasn't read it, is a reinterpretation of the classic Martian Manhunter character from DC Comics, except for in this one, there's a real detective named John Jones, who's like a hardscrabble dragnet, type classic detective, and he gets whacked in the head, and then when he wakes up, he's got an alien in his head, and it's a good guy alien, but it's also a surreal alien, and so the alien and John Jones struggle to occupy this mind together while they try to solve a couple of crimes, which turn out to be part of a bigger conspiracy that are essentially an alien invasion, to just super simplify it. And it is complicating John's perceptions of the world. It's interrupted. It's becoming a challenge for him to sort of interact socially. So it operates on those two levels where the character, Dennis, is saying that the character is specifically autistic, and also the alien is serving as a metaphor for autism and how he
Right.
interacts with the world. And so it's this really rich book for somebody who's been doing the kind of work that I've been doing, especially. And like I said on the panel, I can't wait to forget it and reread it. Just because that's the way my brain works, is that I'll mostly forget it and then reread it and have another rich experience.
See, I'm lucky enough that I mostly forget things really fast. If I
So
reread it now.
you can reread it. You can reread it faster than I can. And so Dennis's conversation was wonderful. Katie was wonderful. She was talking about her experiences, and she's a social worker, and she's an activist, and had her autism journey as an adult, as I think you may have as well, Tad. And she seemed to have found the relief that a lot of late diagnosed autistic people seem to have. And I talked to but my thing when I talk on my panel, the reason I focus on explicitly autistic characters is because the work that I do with my nonprofit, the Autism Scene, is targeted to kids. It's targeted to
Right.
specifically kids pop culture and getting more explicitly autistic characters into kids pop culture. My purpose being that I'm trying to help neurotypical kids better understand their autistic peers. And I think, just given my Rolodex and my background, I'm an entertainment attorney. I've worked at Nickelodeon, Warner Brothers Animation, DC Comics over the years, and trying to get more explicitly autistic characters into kids pop culture so that kids who watch these shows and consume this content will better be able to understand their autistic peers, and the modeling that you see maybe in Dora the Explorer or SpongeBob or Fairly Odd Parents, or I guess I just named 3 Nickelodeon shows, but whatever. That's
Right. I mean,
that's that's what I have in my mind. That
for,
that when you see your buddy SpongeBob interact this way with an explicit autistic person, and then you got a kid in class who's got the word autistic associated with them, it makes it easier to translate the empathy and the
right.
understanding than if the character on the screen is only coded as autistic but never mentions autism. So the fact that autism is never mentioned in Absolute Martian Manhunter was something that I thought was a worthwhile topic. I'm not like mad at Dennis or anything like that for not
Right.
saying the word autism, but I did want to know, what was his rationale, and he had a really thoughtful response. I think he acknowledged my point about for kids that there being a benefit to having the word used, that saying like, oh, this character is autistic, understanding that kids will better be able to, will destigmatize, and also at an early age, and better be able to translate and understanding. But that his observation, and especially in speaking with Katie, is that there are people out there who are adults who may be autistic, would benefit from forgiving themselves a little bit or better understanding themselves, but who think of the stigma first and
Right.
won't seek help, or
Right.
won't even self-reflect. And that
Right.
his reason for not using the word is that he felt he could better help those people, because those are the people who represent the thing that touched him, which I assume is empathy for Katie's father and the impact.
Right. Well,
If,
probably empathy for Katie too, because like one of the, I mean, I can't speak for Katie. Obviously, I haven't even met her, but I know one of the issues for me with getting the late diagnosis is you spend so much of your life knowing that something's not quite right.
mm-hmm,
And most of the outside influences or most of the outside world is trying to put really terrible labels on it,
mm-hmm.
lazy, defiant,
Especially if you're older, if you
right,
are in your 60s or 70s now, the things that were being said about autistic people, if anything was being said at all, but
right,
even about people with those traits, was a lot less forgiving than the experience
exactly.
of teenagers
Um,
now.
so like that to me is one of the greatest reliefs first about self-diagnosing and then about when I actually got a official diagnosis and started like working various therapy along those lines is like, oh, like, no, this isn't a character flaw.
Right.
This is I feel things differently. I'm
Mm-hmm.
wired differently. I think differently. And is it a pain in the ass that I'm 40 something and having to rethink essentially my response to like almost every sensation, particularly ones that make my life more difficult? Yeah, it's a pain in the ass, but at least I now have a broader vocabulary and a wider toolbox to work with versus the just, oh no, this is just a character flaw. The only solution is for you to suck it up and be normal, even though it hurts.
Yeah, and look, a preference obviously is for it not to be stigmatized, but especially
Right,
there are going to be some people who feel it is a stigma, or who
right,
can't let go of that, or who are willing to accept it in other people but not in themselves. And so that was
right.
Dennis's point, in
Yeah.
not using the word, is
Well,
that he
yeah.
wanted to be able to help the people who did feel stigmatized.
I think for me that's why it's important to have both.
I totally agree. It absolutely is important to have both, but that means that it's important to have
Right.
Dennis's version.
And I also think it's real. Like I think about the way so often, like it often gets talked about that like change happens very slowly and there then very quickly. But what doesn't really get talked about a ton is the why of that, and the why of that is often simple math. Um, like if you grow up some way, then when you're the person that's in the decision making, like the story I always tell, and it was it was WGN radio sports program, but it was right after the Supreme Court ruled gay marriage legal everywhere. And
Most
the
Obergefell.
yeah, right after Obergefell. And Dave Kaplan was saying, like, I brought my daughter over and I'm like, oh, you got to watch this. This is history, you know. And she looked at me and she's like, you mean they couldn't get married already? That's dumb.
There's a great line in some Paul Rudd
Like
movie where his
16, right? And it had just
yeah,
never occurred to her. Like,
yeah,
because for her generation, sure, there were some old cranks that still didn't like, but like it never occurred to her that that meant that like they were not given rights, you know. So that's why, I mean, the more I think about it, the more I think like your goal of get the word in as much kids fair as possible so that before they can have the stigma, they're already thinking of autism as just a different flavor.
yes, that's exactly right. And that's why I think it's important, or at least that's why I think why I'm
But I
so
also think
invested
it's
in my
important to
angle.
have different looking autistic characters. You should, I mean, because
Mhm.
autism should be, you should have the word autism. And this is where I'm certain it's an uphill battle sometimes with uh children's content creators because they want to simplify things as much as possible. So to take character A who is nonverbal and, you know, withdrawn, etc., and call them autistic, and character B who talks a ton and bounces off the walls autistic. You're gonna have people going, wait a minute, that can't be right. It is right.
Yeah, that's why in part I think it's a numbers game, and I
Right.
definitely think about it that way. Where I don't, I want people to do quote good representations of autism, but that is not my initial focus. My initial focus is volume. Let's just get
Right.
lots of them out there, and hopefully, the writers who decide to take on that task and the executives who are willing to approve it are aware that their reputations are on the line, and so that they might want to do a smidge of research. And they're not always going to get it right, but I'm at the moment not. I am not
Well,
complaining about
I
that.
mean, at least in my limited experience looking at the autism community, particularly since the autism community started being more autistic people than just autistic parents.
Hmm.
Um, we seem awfully forgiving of those that have their hearts in the right place.
That's what I've observed too, especially, and there are things obviously that evolve over time, and I think certainly plenty of people are going to be vocal if they see something they don't like, but hopefully,
Well, I mean, I just the example that I'll use is like you don't hear a lot of love for Rain Man in the autistic community right now, but like if a discussion gets going, there's a lot of people that appreciate that it exists.
yeah, Rain Man's a funny mix. I mean, I'm not really the right person. I have opinions, but I'm not autistic, and I'm not in that part of the
Right.
community to like pass judgment on it. But what I do observe is, as a person who grew up in that era, that was my sole exposure to autism for like a generation.
Hmm.
And so,
Exactly.
to my mind, you could have the next one representation of autism for a generation be a different or better representation if
Right.
that's what you felt was necessary. But I think it's more important to have more representation of autism rather than better
Well,
representation of
that's kind
autism.
of my point, though. Like,
No, no, I
if
know. Yeah, we both
yeah,
agree. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
Well,
that's
so
the
to
strong
bring it,
argument for more is that like there's not as big of a risk as you think because the need for representation is huge. The the spectrum is broad, so like it's not as hard to make somebody who is autistic as one might think. So
well,
really
there's
it's
also
it's
safety in
like
numbers. the
right.
more people I've said this to you before too, but in Hollywood, there's this truism that everybody wants to be. There's a big rush to be first to be second. Like nobody wants to break the
I was
ice, but if
actually going to say it's, I mean, that's probably what you guys like to tell yourselves. From the outside, it looks like there's a big rush to be first to be fifth.
maybe, yeah. Sometimes it takes time to get things through. But the another thing that was interesting, talking about the volume of characters, Dennis also revealed on the panel that he had been writing Tony Stark Iron Lad in his Ultimates run, which was a very well
Hmm.
received recent run of an Avengers
Which
iteration.
I haven't read all of, but as soon as you said that, I went, oh, yeah.
Well, I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't. But he says that he has written, or he wrote Iron Lad, which I'm assuming is a young Tony Stark. I read it, but I
Yeah.
don't quite remember it, as autistic. And so that's another character from him, but another Marvel character who has been, where the writer has explicitly noted that they're writing out the character is autistic, even though the word doesn't appear in the book. As far as I know, Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four under Ryan North, he says that he is also writing that character as autistic. So, and that's pretty cool. And then there's
And I want to say that Grant Morrison actually called him autistic back in.
Yeah, so there was in about 20 years ago, Grant Morrison
Might actually be closer to 30
described it
now.
as close. It's in my presentation. I think it's
Okay.
2000. I think it's 2003, but I could be wrong about that. But it was Sue implying that Reed might be autistic, and
Okay.
and it was like something like Sue walks in the room and says, "Hey, did you read up on any of those articles about Asperger's that I showed you," or something like that. And then
Gotcha.
about 10 years later, Robert Aguirre Sacasa, I think is how you say his name,
Sounds right.
wrote something like, Reed looks directly at the camera and says, "I've diagnosed myself with a mild case of autism that I'm working on a cure right now." So that's,
Oh,
like, okay, that's not how we would say it in
that
2026.
that there are two parts of that I don't like. I actually recently
Yes.
went down the rabbit hole on an Atlantic article talking about the quote unquote rise in mild autism and whether or
Mhm.
not that was hurting the people who had real autism. And I'm sitting there going, motherfucker, are we really having infights like this? Um,
Yeah. Yes.
but
Yes.
but second, like autism isn't something that can or should be cured.
And that's also that's a position that you find a lot in the autism community too. So I try to be mindful about that when I talk about it. And
I mean, and don't get me wrong, that doesn't mean I don't think like because I work with what we call low incidence kids. The kids that need a lot of extra help in various ways. I'm not saying that like if we found ways for kids to be able to do kids and adults to be able to do more things for themselves in a way that they found comfortable and not oppressive, etc., that would be a bad thing. But I don't view that as a cure. A cure is somehow making it all go away. And not only do I not think that we can do that, I think that we would find that would very quickly that would be a be careful what you wish for type of thing, as I suspect that much of the innovation throughout history has been done by autistic people, seeing as we think differently, and thinking differently tends to be one of the things that leads to great art or new invention or, or really anything new.
or diversity in ways that Darwin would find advantageous. Yeah.
Right.
So another
Um,
cool thing that came out
yeah.
recently, and it hasn't that I talk about in the panel, is the character Fairplay. So Superman movie, for people who are less familiar with DC Comics or with the characters, last summer Superman movie breakout character Mr. Terrific in the comic books has a son, and the son was recently created by Jeremy Adams about 5 years ago now, I think. And then Jeremy has written this character who's roughly 10 years old, and he's a super genius, as autistic, but made him explicitly autistic in this earlier this year in DCKO, The Kids Are All Fight special, where they introduce him and they're introducing all the different characters. And in his introduction, it says his birth name and his powers, and specifically that he's autistic. So now, canonically, he is literally the first explicitly autistic DC Comics superhero in the history of DC, which is pretty great.
Which is
And
awesome.
so,
Though
yeah,
I
it's
have
cool. And
always read his dad as autistic. I know it's not explicit, but I've
oh,
always read him as autistic.
yeah,
I've
yeah,
never read a Mr.
yeah,
Terrific and not thought
sure.
of him as autistic.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. Um, and
Kind
so,
of
but
like I'd never thought of Reed Richards as anything other than autistic.
so the son is now canonically autistic, but that was a one shot. And it was,
Right.
I thought, well written, and in the context of a really fun, like, knockdown, drag out comic book adventure. And so that was really cool, but it was a one shot. And in talking to Jeremy about it, he's like, yeah, and I just hope somebody, when you create a character, some of the creators that I've spoken with who do that kind of work say, like, oh, you want to put a toy in the toy box. And
Mm-hmm.
as referring to creating a new character that maybe can become part of this DC world that he, or superhero world that he loves so much for his whole life. Now he can say he put a toy in the toy box. But you hope then that somebody picks it up and runs with it and does something with it. And what was cool is that they've announced a new Teen Titans comic book written by Kyle Higgins and drawn by Danielle Di Nicola, I think is an artist's name. I think that's who it is. And it's coming out September 2, I want to say. It's a new Teen Titans comic book. It's headed by Jason Todd, the second Robin, and who's kind of the bad boy of the former Robins. And so he's leading a group of otherwise young, teenage superheroes, one of whom is Fairplay. So they give him a costume redesign. And that's cool to me that he's been picked up. But you still wonder, like, okay, he's in there. Will he be autistic? Will he be explicitly autistic? How will they do the characterization? And I'm very excited to see it because the artwork sort of, if I'm looking for it, I would say, oh, that the body language
Danielle
could.
DiNicuolo?
Yeah, I don't know how to say her name, but Danielle Di Nicola. So if you look at the artwork, you can see that there are 5 or 6 characters on the team, and the Fairplay character has a decidedly distinct body language relative to the other players.
Well, and like between the chest pack and the high collar and I'm just looking at the picture here and thinking he's coded autistic.
He could be, right? Like he could not be, but since I'm looking for it, and since we know a little something about the character, and this is just preview work, so I've been trying to get a hold of Kyle Higgins and looking for anybody to say anything particular about it, and Danielle also. I think I emailed her today, but my intention was to try and interview her for my nonprofit just to get some kind of to find out about it.
For me, looking at this preview image, the only thing that could make him code more autistic is if he had a pair of headphones on.
Well, yes. And I think he might have a pair of headphones around his neck, right?
Well, you can't tell because he's got the high collar.
Oh, the high collar. Okay.
It covers up his mouth.
Yeah. And
which again, like that's not like a hugely common autistic thing, but it's not an uncommon autistic thing.
Yeah. And yes. And, as we've discussed before, autism presents in many different ways. But if you were to look at that character and someone said, as drawn, this character is autistic, you could say, oh, I see it. The artist took that into consideration and did a pretty decent job of, representing autism in that character, a flavor of autism at least. So I'll be curious to see how that comes out, but I'm very excited about it. I'm very glad that in this ongoing series, they got Kyle Higgins, who's a pretty hot writer right now. Is he Power Rangers that he's doing right now, or Radiant Black?
Is he doing Power Rangers too? I know of his Massive verse.
Yeah, well,
I love his Massive verse.
Yes,
or at least what I've read of it. I haven't read enough of it.
I've only read a couple. I guess I read the first story arc, and agree. It's a really fun. He's a fun writer. I remember him back from when he did Nightwing, which I guess that will take us to the cabinet when we're ready. Yeah, there's a couple things we've touched on already that will apply to this episode of Cabinet. But so I'm excited to see what happens with that, and I'm hopeful based on the materials that I've seen, but I have not seen any kind of confirmation. I realize this is like a niche thing to be concerned about, whatever. It's something that I've sort of put some effort into. And then the last thing I wanted to say on the topic is that I guess I'm saying this on a podcast, so I'm sort of committing myself to it. But when I did this presentation at Emerald City Comic Con, somebody who was an academic who was there and I hung out with for a minute, she said that I should turn this panel into a book. And I said, no, I didn't want to do that. And I knew she was an academic, and I know how hard it is to write an academic book. And I don't really have a reason to write an academic book because I'm not trying to be a professor. I'm not trying to get tenure. I don't even have a master's degree or anything.
I would argue that you don't. I mean, could there be an academic book from this? Sure. But I think it'd be just as good as a non-academic nonfiction.
Well, I apparently have come around because I'm now feeling like I have more stuff to say than I can fit in this panel. And the last 2 or 3 times I've done the panel, I've had to like whip through the slides and skip things that I love talking about and I think are very important. So I think I'm going to try and figure out how to get the comprehensive version of the material that I've been working on out there somehow. And I think a book is going to be part of it. So hopefully over the next year or so, I'll have the opportunity to sort of turn this into a book. And then if you got a book, you've got an excuse to go out and talk about the book and try and sell the book too.
I mean, I don't know if anybody's done it, but it'd be a worthwhile thing to do. Um, I would be willing to bet that you have a significant portion of the comics creative community that is either diagnosed or identifies somewhere in neurodivergence. Um, a lot more of them, I think, have ADHD diagnosis, or that's what they're comfortable identifying with. Though I know there's also a lot of borderline personality, and I know that there's a lot of autism or because again, like comics are a weird art. Um, you have to think in ways that are different than other mediums. And I would be willing to bet that artists in general wind up coding more neurodiverse than the general population. Um, but it seems to track a lot of people. So I think it would be an
I think
interesting
maybe
thing at
you've got
some
a book
point
in you
to,
too.
yeah.
That could be your
Instead,
book.
I mean, it's
You met Andrew. I mean, Andrew already uh he just had his what was it, ABCs of ADHD
Mm-hmm.
or something just came out, and he's got a neurodiversity one coming.
That's cool.
Um
Well, so that was what I wanted to talk
so
about with San Diego.
so
Otherwise, I
yeah, there's
really enjoyed the
definitely
con. It was very nice seeing people and running around, and I didn't get to go to as many
yeah.
panels as I usually do, but I did enjoy myself. One of my son's friends, who okay, I guess we're still talking about autism. It's funny. One of my son's
Yeah.
friends is this kid Declan McConville, awesome kid. They went to school together. They go to acting class together in this very small low key acting class, and they're buddies, and Declan is an actor, and his dad has helped him, go out and audition and do fun things. And for his talent show, he did a scene as Pa Jode from the 1939 Grapes of Wrath, which was just
nice.
awesome. He was so sincere and serious in giving this like
Right.
heartfelt speech, from the end of the
Well,
movie.
I mean,
It was great.
when you were talking about representation, I was thinking that I rewatched Atypical last week.
Oh yeah, I haven't seen the final season, but I've watched a bunch that I
I
liked
guess
it.
I'm a few episodes away from finishing the
Mhm.
final season in terms of my rewatch, but
Yeah.
but
Well, so
yeah,
anyway, so Declan was there, and the reason he was there is that there's this movie called The Sandlot, a baseball movie. So you probably know
I
about it
love The
better than I.
Sandlot.
So I've never seen it, but I know what it is roughly. Yeah, um,
Right.
and so the
I
guys
mean, I
from
guess
that
you're older
movie.
than me too, so that's allowed.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Because you were
I
a
missed it.
teenager when it came out, and it's like the
I might have been in
perfect
my
middle
20s when
school
it came
baseball
out.
movie.
I think it came out in the early 90s, and
It
I would have
did.
been in my 20s. Yeah, yeah.
Are
So
you that much
I
older
just
than me?
I was born in 1970.
Okay.
Um,
And I was
but
born in 1980. Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
yeah, yeah, that counts as older.
Yeah.
So they made that movie, and now these kids are young adults, and they got together and they decided they wanted to make something of a spiritual sequel to The Sandlot. So it's the same actors from that movie as adults now who are coaching their own kids' baseball teams. So
That
that's
sounds
basically
amazing.
it's basically the setup. So they did a panel at Comic-Con in a pretty big hall, which was really fun, and they had those 8 guys or however many there were, and they had really fun chemistry, like middle-aged men who've known each other since forever, who, unlike a lot of actors, they seemed like they didn't care to say the right thing, because a lot of them gave me the impression, oh, I'm gonna say goodnight to my son. Hey, good night, Freddie. Have a good night's sleep, okay, bud? Say hi, Mr. Tad.
Hey, Mr. Tad, I have to go to sleep,
Hey,
so good night.
sleeping is a good idea. It's good for you.
um, I'm telling Mr. Tad about Declan at Comic Con. And so they did this panel, and they had the 8 actors up there, and they were busting each other's chops, and they were very fun. It felt like a very real set of relationships. And Topanga, I don't know what her real name. I forget what her real name is, but the woman who played, she was a girl then, she's an adult now, played Topanga, is the wife of the lead character in the sequel show, and it's called Dugout Dads. And so Declan is the son in Dugout Dads, and he's like the, I
Okay.
guess, not very good at baseball kid. I think that's what his role is. And so Declan is autistic, and he got called up to the stage to introduce himself, and he was so charming and quirky and wonderful. And I wish there was video. I videotaped it, but I didn't get the screen, and I didn't have a good view of him. So you can only really hear the conversation, but he just was
Right.
so so quirkily charming. It was really great. So I'm hopeful that the show does well, and that it's only going to be on,
Yeah.
I don't mean to be diminishing it, but it's going to be released like on YouTube somewhere somehow in about a week, I think. But he was charming and it was great, and so that was a really fun thing in Comic-Con, was to see a friend of my son get pulled up on stage and essentially charm a room.
August 26th on YouTube.
Yeah. So
I will be
showed,
all over that.
good. I mean, yeah, I mean, it seems like it's right up your alley if you know the movie and you're a baseball guy. Like,
I mean, the Sandlot is one of my top 10 baseball movies.
oh wow, that's amazing. Well,
Yeah.
then
No, I mean,
you'll enjoy this
it's
one.
not just I know the movie. It's and like I'm not alone with that. I
Oh
mean,
no, I recognize there were a lot of people there and a lot of people getting signatures for stuff, like really adamantly wanting to get signatures. They had to clear everybody out of the room because the next panel was coming in, and there was a long line of people who were upset that they didn't get their signature that they wanted at that very moment. And then there were people in cosplay from the movie, the original movie, which was really fun too. So that was cool. That was a very cool experience. And, there's always great cosplay. And if you go to theautismscene.org and go to the press releases, or if you go to the Beat, so Heidi McDonald's website, the Beat, so Tamar Dar ran an article about my panel, the one I've just been talking about. And in that, is the summary of the whole panel, including some other things.
Yeah, just to give you an idea, Britt, Joe Posnanski just did a top, I think, 75 baseball movies, acknowledging that like the top or the 75 to 50 are like bad, and it starts getting good or debatably good somewhere in the 50s. And like he sent out, I don't know if he actually said anywhere all the people he sent it out to get votes, but like Michael Schur was one of them. Friend of 22 panels, Derek Gold was one of them. The Sandlot came in front of the Bad News Bears.
That sounds about right. I mean, given the age cohort of people who would likely be participating in that poll, like I'm sort of in the old edge of.
You're younger than Posnanski.
I'm like the youngest person who would care about Bad News Bears, probably.
I love the Bad News Bears.
Oh, did you really? Oh, okay. Maybe I'm wrong then.
Bad News Bears is one of my top 3 baseball movies.
Really? Oh, hey, I stand corrected.
I mean, to a certain extent, like when you get into people who love baseball movies, when they were made doesn't matter anymore.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Interesting. Well, then
I mean, it's kind of like great comic books. Like I don't probably have the same affinity for 80s comic books in general that you do, but I bet you our favorites are very similar.
Interesting. I was just listening to a podcast it's Tony DeZuniga's, no, wait a minute. Todd DeZago's podcast, and he was talking about top 5 comfort comic books, and he was interviewing somebody like Walt Simonson. It wasn't him, but it was somebody like that. And
hey, so one of my cats is named after Walt Simonson.
Oh, neat. So they were going back and forth.
Walter Odin Meatball.
They were going back and forth talking about their comfort comic books, and they were mentioning things that they acknowledged were not particularly great comic books, but that were when they were the right age. And so they were talking
Secret
about
Wars will always be one of my comfort comic books because it was the first book I bought.
Which one?
Secret Wars.
Oh, Secret Wars. Yeah.
I was 4 when it came out, and it had all the heroes on the cover. And that made it the best.
Yeah, and then the dolls in the toy store too.
Exactly.
Well, so this guy had said,
I think his
name was Walter. He was talking about, you might not kind of key into this. There was the original Teen Titans run in the 60s, and then it kind of brought it back briefly in the 70s, and then it came back with Marv Wolfman and George Perez in 1980. So he cited the like 7 or 8 issue run that was in the late 70s or mid to late 70s, I guess. And it's a quirky, weird set, and I love them also, but I got them as back issues basically, and he was getting them off the stands, and that was his thing. And he's like, look, they weren't that great, but I loved them. And they as comfort foods go, like they bring me back to that time. Yeah, and so I feel the same way. I've been rereading Justice League lately from Dick Dillon, from starting from like 1967 up to about 1980.
And like people your age are the most likely to like say like enjoy the Bad News Bears Breaking Training, which is which is not a good movie or a good baseball movie. Um, but if you happen to be alive at the right time and you got to have I mean, it's kind of like I probably like the Mighty Ducks 2 way more than I should. Mighty Ducks is a movie that can transcend its time. It's better than that. The sequel is not. But if you were the right age at the time, it's a comfort thing.
Yeah,
So I guess
I
what
think
I'm
that makes sense.
saying is both The Sandlot and Bad News Bears are more than just comfort fodder.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bad News Bears. I remember seeing and wanting to see it, but I also remember it having like a little bit of foul language, and I think I was a little young. I was a little young to be allowed to see the
You would have been,
earlier
I think,
ones.
6 or 7 when it came out.
I guess. I mean, I don't know what years they came out. I know there were a couple of them, but I remember one was in the movie theater, and I wanted to go see Jungle Book, and it was sold out. And so I said, "Can we go see Bad News Bears?" My mom said no, because I'm sure because of the potty language and stuff.
There was definitely some language. But it was well done with language.
I'm sure it was. I mean, I vaguely remember because I eventually did see it, and I'm sure that the language that they used would not really hold up today. Because I know some things that they said that just would not be smiled upon by today's audience.
No, I mean, like this actually, Bad News Bears is actually a great example of intent matters. Like we always talk about this or that wouldn't hold up today, and most of the people talking about that, or like talking hard about that, are people who want to say things for the wrong reasons and don't understand why there are consequences for that.
I mean, there is a character named Lupus.
There is. Timmy
and
Lupus.
I feel like, and my recollection is that they use some language there that we probably wouldn't use.
But I mean, they dropped the N-word. They I mean, they drop some things that shouldn't be dropped, but there are also, I mean, I'm going to try to figure out how to say this without saying the actual words, because I don't feel like it's my place to say the words. But like, there's a point where Tanner's like, we've got just a group of N's, S's, and pansies, and like immediately has one of them, or like one of them turn, one of the other players turn to him and go, representing the vast majority or something along the lines of, as one of the few people on this team that isn't a Jew and S or pansy, you should watch yourself before we kick your ass. So it's like the stuff came out, but there were consequences for it. It wasn't like, oh, he's cool because he's dropping, slurs. It was, oh, even from his teammates that like him.
Yes.
And then later, like, he's the one that digs into Timmy Lupus the most, but then there's a scene where he literally takes on, and Tanner is like,
yes, Tanner's the kid with the anger problem, right?
Well, but also the small kid with the anger problem, right?
I have not seen
takes on
Bad
like
News Bears
3
in 40
big kids
years,
who were,
and I don't know that
picking on Timmy.
It's very possible I've never seen it, so I'm probably not the right person to have this conversation with. But like Heidi McDonald or whatever, like your baseball friends.
Oh,
like,
we've talked
Bad
News Bear. We have.
You have a special episode.
Totally have.
All right. Well, speaking of special episodes, do you want to slide over to Brit's cabinet?
We can.
All right.
We can.
So today, the part of the
or
cabinet,
we could just talk about what you've been reading lately. Whatever works best for you.
Let's do the cabinet. We could.
Okay.
I have lately. I've been reading old stuff anyway, so we may as well have the structure for it. I subscribe. One of the things I did at San Diego Comic-Con was subscribe to DC Infinite, which is their comics.
I have that subscription.
Yeah, and so I've been digging through that, and it's been funny to see what I want to read. And I'm going to give
a big plug right now, both to you and to our listeners. It just wrapped up, and I'm a little sad that there won't be any more. But Andrew Aiden's DC Go series, Taste of Justice, is just outstanding.
I briefly looked at it, and I'm going to try and dig more into that.
I love it.
I looked at the episode that had Red Tornado and Martian Manhunter, I think, because I was doing research for Martian Manhunter. Yeah, they did some cooking or something.
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, every episode, every issue is built around cooking something.
I see. Yeah, I don't
remember. In fact, while they don't give you the explicit recipe, Andrew went out of his way to write it in such a way that if you wanted to make what they were making, you could probably do it from the comic.
That's really fun. That's cool.
Yeah.
He's a cool guy.
I love Andrew.
But I found myself reading Justice League, and so and specifically Dick Dillon, the artist for Justice League. So he was the Justice League artist for, I don't know, almost maybe 100 issues, which is such a long period of time. I think that was
when was
from
that?
Roughly 67 to 1980. He was replaced by George Perez, but he was the main and possibly only penciler on Justice League for a decade or so.
Wow.
And so he starts with the inker Sid Green, who makes it look like 1960s DC Comics. And by the end, he's got Frank McLaughlin, which makes him look like Neil Adams. And so I'm curious to see, as I read through, how much am I noticing the evolution? I'm sure when he got hired, he was hired to sort of replicate the Wayne Boring look, the big boxy DC Comics characters. And then but I know that by the end, he's got that sort of lean, gymnast sort of look with dark inks and like moody.
Well,
inks.
and bringing up the inks also raises the question, like, what was the penciler inker, because what's the word I'm looking for? Work division, because different teams work really, really differently.
Yeah.
In terms of,
I don't know.
There's a lot of stuff out there where almost all of the detail is from the inker, and the penciler really gave the page layout and the poses.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know the answer, but I'll be curious to see just as a reader how it unfolds. So when I graduated law school in 2007, one of the gifts that I gave to myself, I did an internship at DC Comics in 2006-ish. And I got to go visit the library up there at DC Comics, where they had bound essentially all of their books as reference materials. And they bound them with, leather bound books that looked like law books to me. And so since I was going to go be a lawyer, I thought it'd be cool to take some of the books from my collection and bind them together in a similar way. And I found the same bindery, Brewer Cantelmo, that was down the street from where DC's offices were at the time, and where my office happened to be in New York City at the time. So I decided which books that I wanted to get bound. I picked various runs of comic books that I really liked, and I brought him over to Brewer Cantelmo, explained what I wanted. They had him try and make them look like what I remembered the DC library looking like, and they bound these books. So now behind me in my various offices over the years, I'll have like this collection of books that look like law books. And when you look closely, it says the Payne collection. My last name is Payne.
Right.
And it says, the title of the book and some of the creators of the book. So that's the part of the Payne collection, of my cabinet that I thought we'd visit today. Now,
absolutely.
For you,
and I'm going to quickly.
That means this is going to be superhero heavy.
Yeah, that's okay. But while you're walking, I'm gonna tie it to a couple other 22 panels episodes. The first is we've talked to Scott Bryan Wilson a couple of times. Scott Bryan Wilson was the guy at DC who was charged with really traipsing all over the country to track down the issues they were missing for that library. And when he was given that job, there were a few thousand, and when he left that job, there were, I want to say, less than 50.
Wow, that's he got
to go find all sorts of back issues. But then the other thing is, like, I haven't seen the bound ones at DC, but I'm pretty certain that the set in Paul Levitz's den is the same, and he did show that to us. He's got like built into the wall bookshelves that you pull out, and they're like the bound volumes of everything.
So I have something somewhat similar. So if you look behind me, there's a plant in the way, but you can see.
Yeah.
I mean, I know nobody listening can see anything, but that's one shelf where I have them. But I'm going to look at this shelf over here for now. And I've become friendly with the archivist at DC as well recently, and he is in the process of scanning as many of these things as he can. So he's getting exposed to, and he says he really loves the Golden Age books. So he is currently trying to get those, I suppose, into DC Infinite, but also maybe to get better quality books and to be aware of what we don't have. So I'm just going to pull.
If I ever get you to come to Ohio with me for CXC, one of the things they do with the Billy Ireland is scan and restore old art. So,
that's awesome.
a lot of times when you see like a Fantagraphics collection of old
comic strips or whatever, that Billy Ireland has been involved in getting the best possible art for them. We're looking at
that's awesome.
Elseworlds Superman Batman from 94
so the first
to
book that I'm pulling out, this is not
2003.
excuse me, I'm not pulling it out for any particular reason other than it was on the top of the pile that was by my hand. And you can see at the bottom, it says the Payne Collection, 94 to 2003, Elseworlds, Superman, and Batman. So I loved the Elseworlds books when they came out.
Do you have the Shaken Thrill Killer in there?
Well, what I did was I picked the ones that were my
favorites.
favorites. So let's go through and see which ones I did pick. The first one in this is just the Batman and Superman ones, and they're just the ones that I like. There's also I have a separate one that's JLA JSA. And so the very first one, as you can see, is Holy Terror by Alan Brenner, Norm Breyfogle. I don't quite remember the plot of this one.
That was one of the vampire ones.
Oh, so he's a vampire in this one? Okay.
I forget if he's a vampire or deals with a vampire.
But then the second book that's in this collection is
The Speeding Bullet.
One of the greats.
That's a great one.
Essentially, Superman.
Is that Eduardo Riso?
No, Eduardo Barreto.
Barreto.
Yeah. It's James Amatis. I forget which it is now.
I've heard it both ways,
and it is great. Yeah, I've spoken with him, and he doesn't seem to care one way or the other. But I would like to try to remember. And this book is great. This is Clark Kent, or excuse me, Kal-El lands with the Waynes, basically.
Yeah.
And so he has the same experience as Batman, and he becomes Batman with Superman's powers. That's roughly what it is. And I remember really liking that one a lot. Some of these I haven't read in a very long time. Batman Houdini by Howard Chaykin and John Francis Moore and Mark Chiarello.
A couple of people that I know and like. I have original Chiarello art on my wall.
Oh, no kidding.
And both Mark and Howard have been on the show for a couple of times.
I don't recognize the name, but
Mark Chiarello was the art director at DC for a long time.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, it's a beautiful.
He also does a lot
looks...
of baseball art. So this is you being the football guy. You don't get to hang out with the cool people when we talk sports rather than comics.
I mean, look at that drawing of Joker.
Oh yeah,
cool. And then do you recognize that building? I know this building. It's a New York City building.
Oh, that's the is it the Flatiron?
Yes, the Flatiron building. Yeah. It's a beautifully rendered book. Gosh, I haven't
Brooklyn,
read this in a long time. No, it's in
not in Brooklyn.
It's in 23rd Street, Manhattan. Yeah. It's in the publishing district, basically. I mean, they call it the Flatiron District. And then another similar one. So this is called Batman Darkest Night, and it's if Bruce Wayne got picked to be the next Green Lantern.
Okay. I don't think I ever read that one.
It's Mike W. Barr, who I believe was Batman and the Outsiders. There's James O. Barr, who I think was the Crow.
I think Mike W. Barr also did Batman Year 2.
Alan Davis drew that, right? And
but Barr's the writer.
I think you're right. And I think Alan Davis and I want to say McFarlane. Is that right? I don't know. I think you're right, though. I think you're right. He was a big writer around that time. And so this is
Batman Year 2. I just looked up is
it Alan Davis? Was that right?
Mike Barr and Alan Davis, Paul Neary, Alfredo Alcala, Mark Farmer, and Todd McFarlane.
Yeah. Farmer's good too. I mean, I guess he's mostly
over three whole issues. So that can't all be pencilers. Pencilers were Davis and McFarlane.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Were Neary, Alcala, and McFarlane.
Yeah, Neary typically inks Alan Davis. So that's not surprising to me. So I remember really loving these books. And you got to remember when they came out too. I mean, these were coming out around 1995. And so that was post-crisis. So pre-crisis, everything was, I'm telling you stuff you already know, but pre-crisis 1985, there were multiple Earths and all that kind of stuff. And then the editorial mandate.
We're about to start reading Crisis in our Bronze Heroes of Bronze book club.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, I loved it. I've read that.
We're actually going to be reading Crisis side by side with Secret Wars.
That's really fun. I read those off the rack, all of those.
Yeah.
But so to address Elseworlds, in 1985, they basically put all the heroes that had been on different Earths onto one Earth, and that was the mandate of DC Comics for the next 10 years: is that no alternate Earths, no imaginary stories. It's all in this single continuity, and they did their very best to make it work. And occasionally, people would sort of cheat a little bit, but that was basically the ethos. So for 10 years, you weren't really seeing these alternate imaginary stories. So when they started doing the Elseworlds line, which kind of came out of Gotham by Gaslight, which my recollection is that was not an official Elseworlds, but is considered the first Elseworlds. And that was successful. So they started doing other similar kinds of things, essentially what ifs. So after 10 years of having none of that, this was all fresh, new ground. It was very exciting at the time. Now there's a glut of it and it's boring. But unless it's extraordinarily well done, like the Absolute Universe. But back then, this was so fresh, and even a bad Elseworlds idea was usually a fun read. And so I can't entirely speak to the quality of some of these things. I just remember the feeling was so wonderful. So then this was Man of Steel by Priest, Bright, and Schultz. I'm not quite sure who Bright is, but it's got a Mike Mignola cover.
Mark Bright.
Cool.
Mark Bright did a lot of, or MD Bright did a lot of Milestone.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So this appears to be a post-apocalyptic story that's essentially Batman and Superman. And it was in Superman Man of Steel. That was when they did the Elseworlds line had been so popular that they decided one year, I'm assuming it was 96, but I could be wrong about that. Oh no, 94, there it is. That all of the annuals that year were going to be Elseworlds. And so, like I said, they weren't all great, but I don't know, everybody was on board, and I enjoyed them quite a bit. There was a Green Lantern one where by DeVries, Zachary, and Pepoy. I don't really recognize those names too well, but it appears to be a John Stewart Green Lantern in a Nazi occupied America. And the two, it appears that the two people who are the poster boys for this Nazi thing are Hal Jordan and Guy Gardner. So I don't remember that one at all, but it looks pretty cool. And it looks like, they took big swings, which was again, just really fun. I think when people take a big swing, even if it may not be a perfect book. John Byrne did the Superman in Action Comics annual that was, and I guess there was also something by Louis Simonson and I forget what Yankee's first name was, Janke, but it was Superman in Revolutionary Times. So, those kinds of stories had been told, but this was one, this was where they really invested in it, I thought. And as if they didn't
I think the Elseworlds took deeper dives into it a lot of times. And DC better than I do, so absolutely correct me if I'm wrong. But I feel like a lot of the ones before Elseworlds, it was more along the lines of like when Star Trek goes back in time, where it was
there was certainly
this Superman put in the old West or whatever, whereas Elseworlds was what if
and they could
Superman
kill characters, they could dramatically change them, which sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. So then there's a Shadow of the Bat. Elseworlds annual was The Tyrant by Alan Grant, Joe Staton, and then Rainey and Ottolini, whoever they are. And I have no recollection of this, and I'm kind of just thumbing through it to see if I can figure out what was the premise. But it's the art is really cool. Oh, and it's got Anarchy, this character Anarchy from the 90s, who has since gone away. It looks like we're seeing a lot of the Rogues Gallery. I don't know. It kind of looks like maybe Bruce Wayne gets made King of the World or something like that. Superman at Earth Ends by Tom Veitch and Frank Gomez. I don't know who Frank Gomez is, but it seems like it looks like a Kal-El as Commandy or something like that.
Right.
Let's see. Dark Allegiances by Howard Chaykin. So that was just a standalone Elseworlds, and it kind of looks like Fritz Lang's Metropolis a little bit, like an Art Deco-y version of Batman. Elseworlds Finest, which is sort of like it's John Francis Moore and Kieran Dwyer and Hilary Barta, and it kind of looks like Edgar Rice Burroughs era artwork with Superman and Batman. So it kind of looks like pre-pulpy, maybe even late Wizard of Oz type stuff. But it definitely has that old timey Flash Gordon, I'm about to say Milt Caniff as if I really knew what that meant, but that era. So that if the superhero has been created like 10 years before. And then did you say Thrill Killer, Howard Chaykin and Daniel Bard?
Yep.
Yeah, so I have that one in there. But I think this might be the sequel. I'm not sure. This is Thrill Killer, Batgirl and Robin.
No, Thrill Killer and then Thrill Killer 62.
I see. Okay, so I think I only put in Thrill Killer. I know my recollection is I didn't care for the second one as much as the first.
Right. No, the first one's much better.
Yeah, and it's super cool. Like it's this. So this looks like this is a very noir, like sexy kind of, very Howard Chaykin story starring Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson having an adventure
and a female Joker.
Superman War of the Worlds, Roy Thomas. So you know that this is going to be historically well researched, and it looks like if the War of the Worlds story happened and Superman responded, that's what this is.
Just last week, and I loved this, Kyle Baker got to do the IDW Roar of the Worlds, which was War of the Worlds if Godzilla responded.
That's awesome. That's really funny. Elseworld's Finest.
The Godzilla Monsterpiece Theater has been amazing.
Oh, yeah. There's been so much Godzilla content lately. So
IDW has been knocking out of the park with the Godzilla stuff lately.
Elseworld's Finest is Supergirl and Batgirl. It's written by Barbara Kiesel and with the art by Matt Haley and Tom Simmons. I don't know Matt Haley or Tom Simmons, but Barbara Kiesel was a big writer in that era, an editor, I believe. I happened to see her at Comic-Con just a couple of weeks ago, and she gave a wonderful seminar. It was designed for writers, so I wasn't really in the right room, but it was about how to break through writer's block, essentially, or how to come up with your ideas or how to be inspired. And she walked around the whole crowd, which some people didn't like because they couldn't hear her very well. But my daughter thought was wonderful. She's like, oh, she's a teacher, but she walks around. She thought that was a really cool move to her. And really, and she's a very inspirational person. I found she would be wonderful to have as an editor because she seems, ready to kick the tires and help you, work on your ideas and stuff. And she's, an odd bird, but at some level, who isn't? And I thought she was wonderful. I really enjoyed going to her panel. So I'm not quite sure what the premise is of this book, but it kind of looks like what if, Batman and Superman were women. And it's got a lot of fun characters. There's an ambush bug that makes him look like a Kirby character.
There's a big Barda too.
Yeah, there's Barda. There's a muscle-bound Joker. So these are, I don't know. Some of these, as I look at these, I'm like, God, maybe I should reread these. I mean, I bound them because I love them, but I also bound them 20 years ago, so I don't necessarily remember them very well. Batman Year 100.
Paul's book.
Yeah. So now, do you know this book very well?
Oh, I know this book so well.
So I read it. I remember thinking it was quirky and weird and awesome, but I don't remember a blessed thing about it. What do you remember?
Batman is 100 years old.
Oh, is that what the premise is?
Yeah.
So it came out, in this era when Batman Year One was a big deal. I mean, this is 10 years later, but Batman Year One was a big deal, and then there were Year One annuals. There was one year where they did all the annuals as Year One, so that you would go back and see early in your favorite hero's career.
No, this was Batman as a 100-year-old.
Yeah. Oh man, this is making me think I need to reread this whole volume, this whole collection.
I mean, I definitely need to reread that one again. It's been a while, but
really
I love
cool.
Paul Pope. Period. His seminal creator-owned work, THB, is finally being collected at First Second. The second volume just came out, and I'm reading it right now. I can't recognize or recommend Paul Pope enough.
He's got a very distinct style, and I know that book was very well received, and people really liked it a lot when it came out. So I'm glad that people still like it. Okay, Gotham Noir by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips.
That's right.
the 100 Bullets team. So
not quite the first thing they did together, but really early.
You can tell sort of even just from the name, Batman. Yeah. Gotham Noir. What it is, and just leafing through it.
It's before they started doing criminal.
Yeah, it lives up to it, and so that's pretty cool.
That's proto-criminal right there.
Let's see, and then this one looks like World's Funnest. Yeah, World's Funnest by Evan Dorkin.
I think that's where they finally. Oh, is it all Evan Dorkin?
Well, I doubt it. I think it's more than just
I forget if it was in that one right there, or in a reprint that had that in there that they finally printed Superman's Babysitter, the Kyle Baker story. Flip through, find out if it's there.
Let's see.
because that was the first story to win an Eisner before it was published. Because initially it had been axed and not published, but it got out and it won the Eisner.
Oh, that's really funny. No, this does not. It has a lot of different artists, but it seems to only have one story. But I'll read through it just to see if maybe that's not true. And so
I think there was like 100-page giant reprint of it years later.
I mean, this is a long.
It had that the Superman's baby. I think it's Letitia Lerner.
Captain Carrot and the Amazing Zoo Crew is in here too.
Yeah.
So what it is that there seems to be, it's just one story starring Mxyzptlk and or Mxyzptlk, depending on how pedantic you feel like being, and Batmite, and they seem to be roaming through different universes, so that the different artists are handling some of these different universes that they're popping through. And as I look through it, they have old-timey Alex Ross artwork here. Can you see that?
I did.
He's got Mxyzptlk and Batmite, and of course his Batmite is dressed like the Batman 66, the Adam West version. In fact, it looks like an impish version of Adam West. That's pretty funny. Yeah, and great. It also, as drawn, it looks like somehow it's drawn in the style of Kingdom Come. It kind of looks like Mxyzptlk and Batmite get stuck in Kingdom Come, and it blows the ink off the page. Can you see that little detail?
I can. That's amazing.
So that's pretty fun. So that's one volume of the Payne collection. That little traipse down memory lane. And appropriately enough, I don't know how much longer you want to go, but let's at least do one more book, because the next book that happens to be in the pile.
Looking at that, I don't know if you've come across them, but Andrew Coltrane and I just felt like doing something silly last week, and we did what we're calling the neurodiversity theater goes mad. We picked a random issue of Mad Magazine and read it together on air, commenting as we went.
No, I have not seen that one yet. That's really funny.
And we plan to do it again, and hopefully we'll get even better at it. I don't know how well we did with the first one, but I think if we did things other than Mad, things like that World's Funnest would definitely be the type of thing that we'd have to pull up.
That does seem like it's the that version. You know, it's funny you talk about Mad. At Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con this year, DC, their booth was celebrating, I believe, the 1950s. And so they had a whole wall full of television screens playing the George Reeves Superman show from the late 1950s, early 1960s. And they would play the pilot or at least the origin story, which I'd never seen. And they showed like a little rocket ship, like Ma and Pa are driving around, and then they see something going through the sky, and they drive over, and there's a crashed little rocket that looks like it was made out of an oil drum, like a big oil drum, and it's on fire. And then Pa Kent goes in there and he pulls out a baby, like he rescues a baby from the fire, like this little wrapped up little swaddling thing. And I never realized Pa Kent was such a stud, like going into a burning thing and saving a baby. That was cool. But I'd seen that show a lot when I was a kid, but I don't think I had no recollection of seeing that episode. And while in one of the giveaways was Mad Magazine, they gave away a facsimile edition, I think, of the first issue of Mad Magazine. So sweet. It wasn't the Mad that I knew as a kid in the 70s and 80s, but it was pretty cool that it was the first one.
Well, the first 27 issues were still considered comics.
Yeah, this was comic sized and
they were color. And they switched over to the black and white magazine format in response to the Comics Code.
Oh, gotcha.
Way of getting around it.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Well, so then the next volume from the Payne collection from the library is What If 1981 to 1984. So my guess is that of that original run, this is probably the second half, because I love that series when it came out for the same reasons that that I like the Elseworld stuff too. Marvel was so much younger at that time. So the first one was What If Thor and the Avengers had battled the gods. And when these came out, 1981 to 1984, so Marvel was only 20 years old. And if you think about that now, that means this would only have covered back to 2006,
Right.
What was going on in Marvel in 2006? Like, was that Civil War possibly? That was,
Uh,
I mean, possibly.
no, it was between the two civil wars.
Well, no, I mean 20 years ago, 2006. Oh, so Civil War is more than 20 years ago?
I think the
Wow. All
one
right.
I feel like it was. Give me a
Yeah.
second.
I don't know. I mean, the point that I'm making is that because the continuity was so young, I mean, they hadn't even done any resets at that point.
Right.
They were still trying to say like, oh, these are the same X-Men that you read
Oh
20 years
no, it
ago.
was 0607. So it was 20 years ago.
So
Good
yeah,
call.
just to give you a sense of like the window of time we're talking about. So that
Yeah.
means that when these things, what if Thor and the Avengers had battled the gods? I'm sure by now they've had Thor and the Avengers actually battle the gods. But back then that could have been that would have been a pretty
Well,
interesting.
and generally the way the what if worked was they took a particular moment where one decision was made and made a different decision. So, I mean, you'd have to look at it. I would be willing to bet that like the Watcher sets up in the first couple of pages a time where they could have battled the gods and didn't for some reason.
So the cover seems like the editor gave it a different title than what was on the inside of the book. On the cover, it says, "What if Thor and the Avengers battled the gods?" And on the inside, it says, "What if Thor fought Odin over Jane Foster?"
Well, I mean, that's still fighting a god.
But it's by Peter Gillis, and that was what was kind of interesting. I remember even binding these things and thinking it was such a high profile book that dealt with such big, cool stories, and it was written by somebody I'd never heard of. Like I don't know who Peter Gillis is still, but it was drawn by Rich Buckler and Dave Simons, who I think we saw us. Maybe it was Simmons in the other one, and then Denny O'Neil and Mark Gruenwald are the editors. And to give you a sense of when this was, also Jim Shooter was the editor in chief, and Al Milgrom was art assist, is what it says. So these guys are taking Marvel stories. The next one is what if Captain America had been elected president, and on the cover I see Jerry Ford, Ronald Reagan, Nick Fury, probably Mark Gruenwald, a couple of other luminaries of that era. That's probably supposed to be George H.W. Bush. That looks like Reed and Sue. What if Phoenix had not died? I mean, that's kind of ironic, right? At the time, that was fresh.
Eight issues from here will be what if Elektra had lived?
Yeah. Well, so okay. What if Phoenix had not died? Let's see. That was Mary Jo Duffy. Oh, Jo Duffy is so nice. I got to meet her at New York Comic Con a while ago, and then recently she shouted me out and was like, "Oh, it's so nice to meet Britt Payne." And I was like, "I can't believe she remembers me. That's so exciting." And then Tom DeFalco and Mark Gruenwald were the editors. So it's wild that like this hot book from that time gets pushed over to Jo Duffy. Gosh, I have to throw her a compliment on Facebook or something because that was really cool. What if Daredevil became an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.? That one is, let's see. I can't read it. Michael Fleischer. Oh, Michael Fleischer. Okay. And then Tom Sutton is the art. No, I'm sorry. That's for what if Ghost Rider were separated from Johnny Blaze. So there must be a second story in this book because that's
it wasn't uncommon for them to have a couple of stories in them.
Yeah, I remember one of my favorites that had a split, and I don't know if it's in this volume, was what if the Beast. Yeah, I thought Frank Miller did this one. He did. So Matt Murdock, agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., is Mike W. Barr and Frank Miller and Klaus Janson as writer, co-plotters, and penciler. And as you look at it, it looks like Frank Miller, Klaus Janson. So
but Barr was probably involved in the writing side.
I assume just the writing, yeah, and that Frank Miller was probably a co-plotter and sort of a writer. But it's sort of if you're rereading Frank Miller Daredevil, this should definitely be part of your reading. Okay, so here's one that I still remember like a little Easter egg in this next one. It's what if the Avengers defeated everybody, and on the cover it's the very first lineup of the Avengers. It's no Cap even. It's which I guess means something in 2026. No Cap. I'm not sure. I hopefully I didn't say anything offensive.
Cap actually is to lie. So no Cap would be
that I'm telling the truth. Well, I am telling the truth, so that's helpful. Yeah. Okay, so what if the Avengers defeated everybody? And let's see. Stephen Grant, he's a pretty big deal writer, and then Alan Kupperberg and Al Gordon. I don't really know Al Gordon, and Tom DeFalco is the editor, and Jim Shooter is still the big boss. What if the Avengers were the last superheroes on Earth? So for some reason, it looks like there's a bad guy who, it looks like Kang or some iteration of Kang. But I think this is the one where somebody like the Collector grabs up all the heroes and puts them in like suspended animation. Okay, here it is. So this is, I guess it's no page number on this one, but on this page, you can see whoever this bad guy is, who's kind of in maroon colors. He's got all of the superheroes and supervillains like on a shelf, right? And so I'm going to show Tad what I'm looking at. And if you're listening, this shelf is all the X-Men, and then you've got the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and Doc Ock, and then you've got I don't know, Annihilus and Mole Man and a couple of people. The stone, the Gray Gargoyle, I think he's called. And then can you tell who that is that my finger's pointing at? You can only see half his body. It's Popeye. Threw Popeye in there. It's like it looks like a doll case. Oh, Mile High Comics. There's the big ad for Mile High Comics right there in the middle. And Peter Gillis does another one here with Ron Wilson and Joe Sinnott, and it's a Black Bolt story. It's not clear whether it's an Elseworlds or just like an extra story that they threw in there. It's not drawn by Kirby, but it has that sort of wide-faced, blocky kind of look. It's drawing the Inhumans, so it stands to reason. What if Spider-Man's clone lived? I mean, how crazy is that?
Yeah.
That it became like the 90s, touchstone story by Bill Flanagan, who I don't know who that is, and drawn by Rich Buckler and Jim Mooney and Pablo Marcos. All these great old names from that era. What if Wolverine had killed the Hulk?
I have that one.
It's got this cover that kind of looks like Hulk 181, I think was the number. With Wendigo and then Wolverine kind of diving in, but this time he kills him. And the script is by Rich Margopoulos, and pencils by Bob Budiansky. And the inks are Mike Esposito. So I've heard of Budiansky and Esposito, but it's interesting to go through this and like see a lot of writers.
I think What If was one of the places where they let people almost try out.
I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? Because it's one shots and you're dealing with, they're not creating a new story out of whole cloth. They're just adapting a story. So I guess that stands to reason. So then there's an Inhuman story. What if the Avengers became pawns of Korvac? So that would have been from spun out of issue 200 of the Avengers, which was sort of a controversial issue. And it was Mark Grunwald. So I wonder if he wanted to correct it. And I remember really liking that at the time, and that it has not aged particularly well. The next one is, what if Dazzler had become the Herald of Galactus, and what if Iron Man had been trapped in the time of King Arthur? So the Dazzler one, I don't really know that much about. It was Danny Fingeroth, who I've seen speak at Comic-Cons a lot, and he's great. He's a real, like a proper comics historian, as well as somebody who contributed to the medium quite a bit. But the other one, the what if Tony Stark got trapped in the time of Iron Man? When I was a young comics reader, issue 150 of Iron Man had him traveling back in time with Doctor Doom. And so I assumed that this is a follow-up to that, as if he had not been able to come back and he got stuck there. So, he joined King Arthur's round table and stuff, which seems pretty cool. Oh, now we have the what looks like the Assistant Editors Month version. I don't know if it actually is, but
I love Assistant Editors Month.
It's called What If ? And it says the Marvel Universe has gone crazy and alternate realities will never be the same again. And it's basically the cover is like visual jokes with all the Marvel characters. So Mr. Fantastic is on the cover and he's all stretched around, but his clothing didn't stretch with him. So now it looks like he's wearing like a half shirt.
There is a story inside called What If the Fantastic Four Were Bananas?
On the front, they have Thor with his helmet on, but it's kind of pulled down to his nose. They have Captain America wearing a Groucho Marx glasses and mustache. They have Daredevil with the Steve Martin arrow through his head. They have a fat Iron Man. They have Spider-Man with great big goggles. They have Moon Knight throwing a pie in the face of Silver Surfer.
So I've got it pulled up on the Marvel Wiki. The stories in this are just outstanding, and I'm assuming that they're mostly I'm assuming that it's like one pagers, because
that's what it looks like.
It looks like there are 74 stories in it.
They have Ant-Man giving the Watcher a hot foot. They have Wolverine is sitting on the floor scratching his ear like a dog with fleas.
The story titles are: What if the Fantastic Four were bananas? What if Odin were Peter Parker's uncle? What if Don Blake and Tony Stark were brothers? What if Aunt May were Ant-Man? What if Spider-Man married Spider-Woman? What if Reed Richards took postman Willie Lumpkin up on his offer to join the Fantastic Four? What if Captain America chose to remain nomad? What if Rick Jones left Captain Marvel in the negative zone? What if Nick Fury had to wear an eye patch on his right eye? What if the Ghost
So
Rider
stupid.
had possessed Grandpa? What if Ghost Rider had possessed a skater? What if Ghost Rider had possessed a baby? What if everyone who'd ever been an Avenger remained an Avenger? What if him had married her? What if Black Bolt got the hiccups? What if Galactus ate the Earth? What if Kazar were a middle-aged accountant? What if Hulk were yellow? What if the Invisible Girl dyed her hair? What if Power Man were white? What if the Thing were blue? What if Captain Marvel hadn't died? What if Phoenix still lived? What if Elektra had survived? What if Dazzler had become a stand-up comedian? What if Marvel Comics and the National Endowment of the Arts presented Spidey intellectual stories? What if Willie Lumpkin were Herald
That's
to
really funny.
Galactus? What if Ghost Rider owned a fast food restaurant? What if all the superheroes moved to Toledo, Ohio? What if the Watchers in all the realities got together and watched Watchers watching 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 Watchers? What if Howard the Duck formed his own super team? What if Thor had a Swedish accent? What if Cyclops' energy beams came out of his ears?
That's on the cover.
What if Wonder Man were a woman and Power Man were a girl?
Yep.
What if Black Bolt were a rock star? What if Daredevil was deaf instead of blind? What if the Marvel production crew existed in this reality and the Marvel editorial crew did too? What if Tony Stark had owned an auto plant instead of a weapons factory? What if Sue Storm had become the Thing? What if Moon Knight got all his identities mixed up? What if the Watcher grew hair? What if Alpha Flight talked like TV Canadians? What if Silver Surfer, White Tiger, Knight Rider, Iceman, and Moon Knight fought Wendigo in a snowstorm?
I give you a hint what that panel. That's a one-panel story.
I think you just opened it to that page.
Yeah. And it's a blank white panel.
What if Black Panther fought the Shroud in a coal mine?
And that's an all black panel, and it's written by Tom DeFalco, and the artist is also Tom DeFalco.
What if Moon Knight had 3 different identities? What if King Conan were Bing Conan on the road to Hyboria? What if Black Bolt hosted a television talk show? What if Bruce Banner's pants didn't stretch? What if you went to the movies and had to sit behind the leader? What if
the leader
Aunt
has
May,
a very tall head, for those of you who don't know?
Yeah. What if Aunt May became the invincible golden oldie? What if Aunt May became the astonishing Aunt Ant? What if Aunt May became Auntie Freeze?
Stupid.
What if Reed Richards had not invented unstable molecules? What if the Hulk married the She-Hulk?
Their costumes don't stretch, like the Invisible Woman's costume doesn't turn invisible, just her head. And of course, Johnny Storm, he flames on and his clothes all burn off.
What if Hulk married the She-Hulk? I love She-Hulk.
So it's an I Love Lucy parody.
Right. What if Hulk married the She-Hulk? She-Hulky.
That's a Dagwood and Blondie parody.
Right. What if Norrin Rad had not volunteered to become the Silver Surfer? What if Dazzler had decided to become a lawyer? What if Luke Cage had found the hammer of Thor? What if Doctor Strange were an ordinary magician? What if Ignacio the clown became Sherlock Clown?
Wait, can I slow down? I know that I probably shouldn't read this, but it's funny. What if Luke Cage had found the hammer of Thor? So back then, Luke Cage was somewhat famous for having this like patois that was supposed to be urban, and it just came. He would say "Sweet Christmas" and stuff like that, and that has essentially been washed out of the character.
Right.
But at the time, that was the character. So they have him dressed as Thor, but his clothing is torn because that's what happens to Luke Cage. And it's crossing the sort of phony Shakespearean language that Thor speaks with this like this urban, this urban slang way that they presented Luke Cage at the time. So his line is, "By the gleaming gates of funky Asgard, you suckers are going to eat hammer." So stupid.
Then we've got a whole round of Obnoxio the Clown. Do you know Obnoxio the Clown? I don't even know.
Yeah, he was a
Obnoxio
character they
the
were trying to
Clown.
push, but I don't know that anybody cared about it back
We've
then.
got Sherlock Clown, a Bat-like hero, a Spider-Man-like hero, Obnoxio Hulk, Obnoxio Wolverine, Obnoxio Daredevil, Superman-like powers, or became the Watcher.
Oh yeah, these are all single panel jokes that were just
Uh,
drawing those characters with Obnoxio's sort of head.
and then what if Daredevil could see?
Oh, you know what? Before you get to that, do you remember these ads for Dungeons and Dragons? I don't know if you were the right age
A
to
little
care
bit.
about them. I just thought they were so cool looking that I
Yeah.
don't know that anybody ever. They look like Mike Golden to me, but I don't think anybody ever figured out who drew them, or at least I never figured that out.
What if Thor got a haircut? I love that. The helmet fell.
No, that's why his helmet fell down at his nose, because he didn't have enough hair to keep it up.
What if Spider-Man had married Black Widow? What if Iron Man had an eating
you know the
problem
joke on
instead
that
of
one,
a
of course,
drinking
is
problem?
the Black Widow eats spiders. So it shows her like using a toothpick to clean her teeth, and like Spider-Man's empty costume laying on the floor.
Oh, story 72 is what if Doctor Doom had a sense of humor?
That shows him with Groucho Marx mask.
What if Galaxus needed quick cash?
He sells the Silver Surfer because he's made out of silver. That's how he gets cash.
And what if Stan Lee reads this issue?
And then they show a drawing of Stan Lee, and he goes, "You're all fired." And that was all by Mike Carlin, who's a lovely guy. I got to know him at Warner Brothers Animation. He and his wife are really nice. Okay, the next one is What If Elektra Had Lived? And the cover is Hannigan and Austin. Oh, and then they have Yellowjack dying. But who did the art?
Inside, I'm pretty certain it's Miller.
It looks like it. Yeah, Frank Miller, writer, penciler, and Terry Austin, inker. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It looks really good.
It is.
I like Terry Austin as an inker. I don't know that he's well suited to Frank Miller just because he doesn't, Frank Miller is a special artist. And I think.
Though, ironically, I mean, as much as I prefer, I think Klaus Janson is the perfect inker on Miller.
That's really what I'm thinking. Yeah.
My favorite single issue of Daredevil is 191, and for the longest time, I just assumed that it was a Janson on inks, and it's not. It's Austin.
Oh wow, no kidding. Well, I mean, he was a terrific inker, and I love. I just think of him as being with more traditional artists like Perez and Byrne. Greg LaRocque drew What If Yellow Jacket Had Died? Isn't he still cooking, Greg LaRocque? Maybe not.
Maybe.
It looks good. What if the Fantastic Four had not gained superpowers? So that it sort of has them turning into Challenges of the Unknown. And let's see. Oh, the very next one is one of my favorites, actually. I really like that one. Well, let's see. Was that John Byrne? That would have been John Byrne era. However, it looks like John Byrne. It is John Byrne. Look at that. Let's see if we do the whole thing. John Byrne story and art. That's right. That's cool. I didn't realize there was that extra John Byrne story. Boy, what a treasure trove What If is. And then a Nova story, which I must confess, I never really cared that much about Nova.
Every once in a while, somebody do something interesting, but...
What if Beast and Thing continued to mutate? And those were really sad stories. I remember loving them when I was a kid, but boy, they were so sad. Tom DeFalco wrote them. Let's see. Or Tom DeFalco wrote What If the Thing Had Continued to Mutate? And I think he ends up going crazy, and he might end up dying from the radiation. Yeah, he turns green. Doesn't look good for Ben. Did they cure him? Oh, looks like they cured him. Oh, good for him. And then he got to get married. Oh, that's nice. That's a good ending. What if the Beast had truly become a beast? Alan Weiss wrote it. Scripter and penciler. Yeah, I don't know who Alan Weiss is, but they had him. My recollection is that it's the Beast, and then he turns blue and furry, and then he keeps getting more animalistic until they finally have to send him off to the Savage Land to live with Khazar as a pet.
Okay, I have an answer to your Dungeons and Dragons question.
Yeah, who was it?
Bill Willingham.
Whoa, that makes sense. Oh, okay, I see it now. Yeah. Yeah, I remember when he came out with the Elementals when I was a kid. One of his first indie books. Oh, look at this in
That was one of Shelley Bond's first editorial
no kidding.
jobs, was Elementals.
Crystar, the Crystal Warrior, was a book that was popular. Not popular. I liked it, but it didn't last very long. It was a toy-based book, but it was good. And you can see this commercial for a sort of a Donkey Kong-looking game that seems to involve pigs called Almidar. What if... this one just doesn't say what the premise is. It just says, what if, featuring Daredevil and Captain America, 3 stunning sagas of alternate futures. David Michelinie, I guess, did one of them. Let's see, does it have a title? The Leaving. Yeah, just an alternate reality story. Let's see. What's the next one? What if Thor battled Conan? I don't know that would go too well for Conan, but what if Doctor Strange had not become the master of the mystic arts? It seems like it's an evil Doctor Strange looking guy. What if Submariner had saved Atlantis from its destiny? See, so I was never that much of a Marvel guy, but I did like all of these things. What if the Invisible Girl had died, and now it looks like Reed's gone crazy because she died? What if Conan the Barbarian were stranded in the 20th century? A Bill Sienkiewicz cover with Conan.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, isn't that awesome? So I was never a Conan guy, and I'm also definitely not a gun guy, but I'll tell you, that's a cool looking cover.
Yeah.
Let's see who drew it, though. I don't remember the inside being as good. Peter Gillis wrote it, the guy who's been writing this thing, and then Bob Hall, who I think was a workaday artist back then. I could be wrong about that. Yeah. I'm not trying to insult Bob Hall either. But it looks like, pretty normal comic book art from that era. Another great Bill Sienkiewicz cover. What if Captain America were revived today, which would have been 1984 as opposed to 64 or whenever he was revived? What if Hulk went berserk, which seems like a crazy thing to even bother calling a what if, because isn't this whole thing that he goes berserk? But maybe he goes really berserk.
I don't think he'd gone berserk yet at that point.
Yeah, well, another great Bill Sienkiewicz cover, like a really, really good one.
Yeah.
Peter Gillis wrote it. Ron Wilson of Infinity Gauntlet fame was the artist. I think he was Infinity Gauntlet. And then we're back to a more normal looking cover. What if Spider-Man's Uncle Ben had lived? Oh, I wonder what would have happened there. Let's see. Stunning alternate reality. Let's see who the artist is on the one. What if he'd lived? Peter Gillis wrote it. Ron Friends. So another sort of, you might be right that this may have like operated as a large part of a tryout book. Another good Bill Sienkiewicz cover. What if Loki had found the hammer of Thor? I'm confident that has actually happened in the comics. Peter Gillis writing it again. Kelly Jones of long-eared Batman fame.
Yeah, and Dracula.
And the letterer's
he and Matt
name?
Wagner have their next volume of Dracula coming to Kickstarter soon. So hopefully I'll have them back on 22 panels.
Oh, cool. The letterer's name is Squid, and it's kind of odd because right above the word squid is inker, and you would think Squid would be the inker, but turns out he was the letterer. And that's it for that volume. My guess is that is the last what if from that run. So let's look at
I'm trying to remember how many what ifs were in volume 1. I'll be able to find out.
The letters page was called Why Not?
Yeah.
And so for me, that feels like a pretty good place to stop. But on this particular shelf, we don't have to go over them because you've talked about these books at length. Why The Last Man?
Nice. We're actually about to talk about the first volume of that in the Saga book club while we're waiting for more Saga.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I really liked Why the Last Man. There were a couple of arcs that weren't my favorite, but the premise was great. I thought they stuck the landing, which was really fun. And it was just such a fun drive.
One of my favorite stories that's been told on 22 panels that I hadn't heard before it was told was Paul Levitz talking about Why the Last Man, because apparently it was Karen Berger and Heidi MacDonald that pitched that book. And his initial response was no. We're like, well, why not? And it's like, it's teenage pornographic fantasy. What do you do after like the first issue? No. And apparently he says that Karen just stared at him and said, Paul, do you trust me? Or like, I mean, I skipped parts of it. It's like he said no. They did this whole thing where like, oh, he's got 60 issues planned this moment. And he's like, no. Then finally, Karen just stared at him and said, Paul, do you trust me? And he's like, well, yeah. And she said, then do the damn book. So he did. And when the 60th issue came out, Heidi had moved on and was doing other things. Karen was still there. They invited Heidi back for lunch. And he brought in a cake in the shape of a crow. Um,
A friend of mine knows him, somebody who I was working with when Brian K. Vaughan broke as a writer. My first encounter with him was on Detective Comics. And I remember talking to my friend Jeff Yorks, who's a terrific guy. He produced the most recent, or he was one of the co-creators of one of the most recent Muppet shows, the Muppets Mayhem, about the band.
right.
And we were doing animation at Oxygen Media at the time. And I remember him telling me, that he's got this friend, Brian K. Vaughan, who writes comic books. And I was reading Brian K. Vaughan's, his detective run. I remember I could be,
Yeah.
I think I have this right. I mean, this is now 25 years ago, but he created a villain called Zeiss, who had like
Sounds
camera
right.
lenses for eyes, and he was a super cool looking villain. And that was one where I was like, oh, that guy put a toy in the toy box, because he created a new cool looking Batman villain who I think has had a little bit of a life after that.
Yeah.
And he also, my recollection is that he was like a police officer or something for a little bit, and that he helped around 9/11, but in a sort of more mundane way, like conducting traffic on the Highway of Heroes, which was sort of where the people were traveling so that they could try and dig out the towers and do their best to try and find people in there. And so I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, Jeff was telling me that Brian was a part of that somehow. I could be getting that story confused though.
Yeah, I can't remember. I mean, I know I've heard various stories about all sorts of people with stuff then, so it's sometimes hard to know entirely. Or to keep them straight entirely is what I mean. Didn't mean to
Yeah, me
imply
too,
that
especially from 25 years ago.
didn't mean to imply that like there was any like possibility that any of the stories that I'd known or heard were false stories. Just that keeping, like I said, I can reread something next week because I don't remember it anymore. Which I kind of like.
Yeah, that can sometimes that can make it easier to get out of bed every morning.
you know, I mean, my memory's good for some things, um, but other things not as much. I think part of it with storytelling is I throw myself into it so much when I'm reading, um, that in a lot of ways it's I'm experiencing it, so I remember it the way that the way that I remember experiences. There are certain parts that stick with me and other parts that just kind of slide, if that makes sense.
Sure.
But then when I read it a different time, different things will stick because I'm in a different mood.
Yeah, I think that
And
makes sense. I definitely read things differently over time when I reread them. Like I'm rereading, like I said, I'm rereading these old, Bronze Age Justice Leagues and late Silver Age and mostly Bronze Age, and I'm having a very different experience reading them now.
yeah.
They're so sincere; it's really funny.
Oh, well, I need to get up in the morning and go to a doctor's appointment.
All right.
So
Well, with that,
Uh,
thanks for visiting the cabinet.
yeah, yeah. And we need to not let it go, particularly now that you're done with all of your bar studying. We need to not let it, and bar studying as in legal stuff. Don't people
Mhm.
out there think that our wonderful autism scene guy studies bars and gets
Not yet, at least.
he's not the Secretary of War. Um,
Truthful.
anyway, for Brit and Payne and myself, this has been Brit's Cabinet on 22 Panels, and we will see you after the next page.